We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming for a deep dive emergency edition, Kanlaon volcano that's erupting. And we're here to break down what's going on.
Yeah, it's a race against time. I mean,
Yeah.
just days ago, on February 6th, Kanlaon erupted, sent a plume of ash 600 meters into the sky.
600 meters.
Yeah, and it might not sound like much,
Right.
but that eruption, it triggered a whole cascade of events that have got everyone on edge.
We're talking about more than just ashfall here, right?
Okay.
The article on the Watchers website, they mentioned lahars,
Right.
these volcanic mud flows as a major concern.
Oh, absolutely. Heavy rainfall. You get that mixed with the volcanic debris, and it creates these fast-moving torrents of mud and rock and debris. Imagine a wall of thick, gritty sludge just surging down the Buhangin and Binalbagan rivers,
Wow.
sweeping away everything in its path.
That's a
Yeah.
terrifying thought.
Yeah.
And so the authorities have responded with evacuations, right,
Yeah.
a 6-kilometer radius, which seems pretty extensive.
It's necessary, though. I mean, we're not just talking about the immediate danger from the lahars. The experts at PHI-VLSCS, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, they're warning of potential explosive eruptions, lava flows, even pyroclastic density currents.
Pyroclastic flows, those
Yeah.
sound ominous.
Yeah, imagine a superheated avalanche of gas and volcanic debris traveling at speeds that can exceed hundreds of kilometers per hour, just incinerating everything in its path.
Wow.
It's not a scenario you want to be dealing with.
Certainly not. And this evacuation must be impacting a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
displacing families,
Geesh.
disrupting lives.
For sure. The article mentions that 15 evacuation centers are currently housing those forced to flee their homes.
15.
Yeah. And they're being supported by the Negros Occidental Provincial Government. They're using local funds.
Using local funds. That kind of raises some red flags.
Yeah.
Is there a lack of national resources being directed to this emergency?
Well, the article does quote the governor, and she expresses frustration about inaccessible emergency funds from the Office of the President.
Inaccessible.
A significant sum, too, 50 million pesos. So it does kind of beg the question, are there systemic issues hindering effective disaster response in the Philippines?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
And all this comes on the heels of a statement from the PIHA-VLCS chief that kind of sent chills down my spine. She's quoted as saying, all parameters, not just the event Thursday, are indicating Kanlaon is preparing for a major eruption. What parameters is she referring to?
Well, volcanologists, they use a range of tools and data to monitor volcanoes. And they're looking at seismic activity, ground deformation, sulfur dioxide emissions, all the telltale signs of what's happening beneath the surface.
And those signs in this case seem to be pointing towards something truly catastrophic.
That's the chilling reality we're facing here. And to grasp the potential scale of this impending disaster, we need to kind of delve into Kanlaon's history, a history marked by explosive power and devastating events.
Let's unpack that history then. What kind of volcano are we dealing with here? And what does its past tell us about the dangers that lie ahead?
Kanlaon, it's a stratovolcano, built up over millennia by layers of lava and ash.
Okay.
And it's a type of volcano known for its steep slopes and a penchant for explosive eruptions.
Right.
It towers over Negros Island at 2,465 meters. It's a constant reminder of the raw power that lies, beneath our feet.
And its past eruptions, they paint a pretty dramatic picture. The article mentioned a massive debris avalanche, like the longest recorded in the Philippines.
Yeah. Imagine a colossal landslide, 33 kilometers long, triggered by a volcanic eruption.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the kind of destructive force we're talking about here. And it's not just ancient history either. Kanlaon has a recent track record of significant eruptions.
They mentioned a VDI-3 eruption in June of 2024.
Right.
I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure what that means in practical terms.
So the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI, it's a scale that we use to measure the magnitude of volcanic eruptions, kind of like, like the Richter scale for earthquakes.
Okay.
And a VEI-3 eruption is considered significant. It's capable of ejecting large volumes of ash and volcanic material.
Oh.
It's the kind of eruption that can blanket entire regions in ash, disrupt air travel, have long-lasting impacts on communities.
So we're not just talking about a minor inconvenience here.
No.
This is a volcano with a history of causing some serious damage.
That's right.
And it's been showing signs of unrest for quite some time, hasn't it?
Yeah, this current eruption sequence, it actually began back in October of 2024. And since then, there have been numerous smaller eruptions, mostly phreatic explosions driven by steam. But the underlying concern is that, these smaller events are a prelude to something far bigger.
And that brings us back to those parameters you mentioned earlier. What are the scientists seeing right now that's causing so much concern?
Well, the article highlights some alarming data. On February 8th, just 2 days after the initial eruption, 23 volcanic earthquakes were recorded.
23.
Yeah, and these earthquakes are a sign of magma movement beneath the surface. It's like a restless giant shifting in its sleep.
And then there are the sulfur dioxide emissions, which the article says have been fluctuating wildly.
Right, on February 7th, sulfur dioxide emissions were measured at a staggering 4,186 tons per day, a
Wow.
significant jump from the previous day. And this is a key indicator that magma is rising toward the surface, releasing gases as it ascends.
And the volcano itself is, the article put it as inflated.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like a balloon filling with air. The volcano is swelling as magma pushes upwards, putting immense pressure on the surrounding rock. And this inflation is a clear warning sign that an eruption could be imminent.
That's a chilling thought. All these signs point towards a volcano on the verge of a major eruption. And yet, as you mentioned earlier, there's an element of uncertainty. We can't predict exactly when or how it will happen.
Right. Volcanoes are complex systems, and despite our best efforts to understand them, they can still surprise us. But that doesn't mean that we're powerless. We have the knowledge and tools to mitigate the risks and protect lives.
So what are the crucial steps that need to be taken right now? What can be done to prepare for this potential disaster that's looming? Because we've talked about the immediate dangers of Kanlaon's eruption
Hmm.
and the science behind it and the steps that need to be taken, for preparedness. But what about after?
Right.
The long-term impact on the people, on the region.
Yeah, that's where the true cost of a volcanic eruption really reveals itself, often long after the lava has cooled and the ash has settled. I mean, we're talking about social and economic disruption that can cripple communities for years, even decades.
What kind of disruption are we talking about specifically?
Well, think about the cascading effects. Asphalt contaminates water supplies, makes them undrinkable, right?
Yeah.
Crops wither and die, buried under a blanket of ash. Transportation grinds to a halt as roads become impassable. Businesses are forced to close. Schools shut down. I mean, the entire economic engine of the region sputters and stalls.
And for a region that relies so heavily on agriculture, like Negroes Island does,
Yeah.
the impact on farming must be particularly devastating.
Oh, for sure. Volcanic ash is insidious stuff. It smothers plants, contaminates the soil, makes it really difficult to cultivate. And those lahars we talked about, those raging torrents of mud and debris, I mean, they can wipe out entire field,
Yeah.
destroy crops, livestock, just like that.
It's heartbreaking to imagine the ripple effects of this disaster.
Yeah.
The families struggling to rebuild their lives, the farmers facing economic ruin, the entire region grappling with this long road to recovery.
It is. It's a stark reminder that disaster preparedness, it's not just about, surviving that initial event.
Right.
It's about having the resources and the resilience to rebuild and recover in the aftermath. And that's where the global community has a role to play, right?
So what can be done to support those affected by this eruption and help them, get back on their feet?
Well, immediate humanitarian aid is crucial, providing food, clean water, shelter, medical care to those who've been displaced. But beyond those immediate needs, there's the long-term work of rebuilding infrastructure, supporting economic recovery, addressing the psychological trauma that lingers long after those physical wounds have healed.
It sounds like a monumental task. It's going to require a sustained commitment from governments and aid organizations, the international community.
It is. It requires a shift in perspective, really. We need to move beyond, viewing disaster response as a reactive measure and embrace a more proactive approach, investing in preparedness, building resilient communities, and addressing the underlying factors that make certain populations more vulnerable to these kinds of events.
So as we wrap up this emergency edition of the Deep Dive, we're left with a sense of urgency, a call to action. What can our listeners do to help, to make a difference in the lives of those affected by this eruption?
Well, there are many ways to contribute. Support reputable aid organizations working on the ground in the Philippines. Stay informed about the situation. Share accurate information. Raise awareness. Advocate for policies that prioritize disaster preparedness and support vulnerable communities. I mean, even small actions can make a difference when we act collectively.
We'll continue to follow the story as it unfolds, providing updates and resources to our listeners. In the meantime, let this eruption serve as a stark reminder of the power of nature and our shared responsibility to care for one another, to build a world where communities are better equipped to face the challenges of a changing planet. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive